Ready for our old school, new school with some amazing speakers, some of my favorite flower friends, and the person that is going to be moderating, or I don't know, I guess hosting, is Zoe. So please welcome Zoe, Ian, and Sue. This is old school, new school.
Thanks, Mimi. I'm Zoe Gallina from Botanica Design Studio in Tampa, Florida. We're an event florist. I'm also honored to be the daughter of our old school florist, Ian Prosser. And then in our new school section, we've got Sue McLeary, also known as Passion Flower Sue. So we're going to get started with Ian.
Okay. So I know nowadays that a lot of the classic whiting that I was taught 50 years ago is, as my generation dies, the techniques of the whiting die also. And I have several friends that have floral boot camps or bouquet classes or whatever, and they say to me, well, you should do something to teach these techniques because people are asking them, these girls, and they don't know either. So I think getting back to classic whiting is very important because it creates a foundation. And today I've chosen the ultimate difficult flower, which is Lily of the Valley. Lily of the Valley is a wonderful flower if you know what you're doing with it. And I understand that nowadays we see that very natural, just a little clutch of Lily of the Valley. And does the maker of the bouquet know how the flower behaves? Probably not in most cases. So a perfect example of that is recently a Scandinavian princess got married, and her bouquet was Lily of the Valley. And as she got out of the car, the first thing that I noticed was that the valley was beginning to go because it didn't have a water source. So if you're not in a bouquet holder, the valley needs to be wired between the florets, which is not the easiest thing in the world, but that's okay. In direct contrast to that, if you look at the photographs of Princess Catherine of the UK, her bouquet was in perfect condition because the Lily of the Valley was wired. And so the valley that I have here today, I did at 11 o'clock this morning. So it has not had a water source at all, other than when I put it in the box, I put some wet paper towel over the top just to try and retain some moisture, and we sprayed it also. So I'm really going to kind of show some of that today, and hopefully you will learn some things. But the idea with the valley, because it's such a delicate bloom, is it needs a very fine wire, which is normally a 28 to 30 gauge wire. But what I found very useful, since you really can't buy that wire readily anymore, is to use the Smithers wire. This is the crimped wire, which I really like, and it's fine enough that you can maneuver that wire quite easily. So what you're going to do with valley is take the bloom in your hand, you're going to hold it between your thumb and finger, and you're going to go in between every little blossom, every little floret.
So when you're quoting this for a client, you would say not only do you, obviously the price of the bloom itself is expensive, but then your time, because this is tons of labor.
It's very time consuming, but I always think that when weddings are over and the food is eaten, the dress is in a box, and the flowers are dead, what are people left with? The photographs. So how would you feel if this bride is in the photograph after the ceremony and the bouquet is completely dead and the boutonniere is just like hanging over, looking horrible? So you've got to know how to work with materials. And Sue and I were talking earlier about people knowing the behavior of different flowers. And if you've tried it and if you've tried something and it doesn't work, you need to try it again and again and again and again until you get it right. So So then once you've done this, you're going to support wire it. So with classic wiring, and probably with Sue's wiring also, you want to use the lightest wire possible, and then you can always use a second wire, which is called the support wire. So, you put it in place, and then you're going to tape it. When it comes to a headpiece, which I'm going to do something of that line too, it's very important that you split your tape in half. Take a razor blade and split the tape in half, because as you pull and twist, it becomes thinner. So there's less weight when it's going on the individual's head. So there we go.
Sue, over to you.
Yeah, so I don't really consider myself new school because I do really enjoy the traditional handiwork skills of floristry and feel really strongly that those should be passed on. But I like thinking about how to do, reliable, durable work that feels fresh. So some of my techniques have foundations in traditional floristry skills, but are kind of like pared back and streamlined. So I'm going to show you threading instead of wiring. I'm going to thread. So I'm going to make a bracelet bouquet. Well, I've already made it because it takes a little while, but I'm going to show you how to make the base, and then I'm going to show you a handle bouquet. So you're seeing a lot of handle bouquets now. I'm going to show you armature that I think is really versatile, and again, it's threading instead of wiring and taping. So I use 20 gauge jewelry wire. Before I was a florist, I made jewelry for a hobby, so I like to use jewelry supplies. This 20 gauge is a nice heft, I guess. It can hold some floral weight and maintain its shape, but it's small enough so it kind of is transparent and disappears, especially in video and in photos. So instead of trying to hide the green tape, which is not easy for me, I can show a little bit of this and it kind of disappears once it's intermingled with flowers. So I'm going to get started with my bracelet bouquet armature.
So how long would you say these normally take you?
As long as I have.
Yeah.
So I think wiring and taping takes quite a bit of time, right? And these take time too. I don't know, maybe 2 hours for a bouquet from armature to completion. But really, if you only have an hour, it takes an hour, right? Yeah. So anyway, I have my 20 gauge jewelry wire, and a quick note, the gold is sturdier than the silver. So that's something that I learned the hard way. So I have, I think, 24 pieces here, and the longest one is usually around 26 inches, and the shortest is usually 10 to 12 inches. And of course, you can make this as large or small as you like. And I take my plier and I twist to get it started. And then I'm going to take another plier, and I'm twisting equal and opposite to combine, to kind of thread these wires together. I'm going to add this to a cuff bracelet. So I want this twisted braided section to be 3 times the width of whatever cuff I choose. So in this case, that would be 2.25 inches for this cuff. And I have a little measure stick that I made myself, so I didn't have to have a tape measure here. So I'm going to kind of use that. I'm going to wrap this around the cuff, and then the open ends of this armature, one is going to come this way, one's going to go forward, and then I'll style the hairs, if you will, to make the bouquet form that I want.
So would you say, is this stuff that you do in advance? Or if you've got some downtime, it's stuff you can pre-make,
sure.
months in advance, just store, and then worry about adding the floral later?
Yeah, armatures, once you get comfortable making them, they don't take long to make. But I do recommend testing ahead of time. If you have a client, that's asking for something in particular, it's really important to test it out a few times before you, attempt to make it. And then in terms of flowering it, I like to flower at least 1 day in advance, and then spray it with water, tuck it in a container, hydrate it that way, just like you did yours. So I'm using U-glue to give myself a little bit of a grip for my armature to cling onto, and I'm gonna wind it around the cuff. I do have a completed bouquet that we can kind of pass around at some point because I won't be able to flower these completely on stage. But now I have my U-glue on the top and the bottom. I'm gonna press one open end to my cuff and then take this around as tightly as I can, wrapping it around, and then it comes back. And then what I usually do is take a clamp and, put the clamp on there and let it kind of get happy. Press it down, make sure it's really adhered. And then from there, this is where you style the hair and you decide what form you want. So I usually go for like a crescent or a waterfall form, and I cut and kind of style the wires until I'm happy with the shape.
So there is a golden rule to a cascade bouquet, and we're all seeing cascades come back. For a very long time, we got used to doing the Martha Stewart wad of roses, and now we're seeing a lot of hand-tied bouquets. But now the scales are starting to swing in the other direction, and girls are looking more for cascading bouquets, and when it's more of a traditional wedding, then perhaps, this more compact style is going to work. So basically, the golden rule with the cascade is the center point is directly above your hand as you're making it. 2/3 of the bouquet goes to the front, 1/3 of the bouquet comes to the back. Because not only does this give you visual balance, it gives you correct physical balance. And I think this is something that we often forget about, is the comfort of the bouquet being held, because they're going to hold it for a very long time. And how many girls have you heard say, oh my goodness, it's so heavy, or the handle's so big, or many different things along that line. So I have made the cascade to it. Everything is individually wired. The lily of the valley leaf has a fine wire that you go through one side of the main vein and immediately back through the other side. Pull the wires down, use one of the legs to twist around the little piece of stem that you have left, and then you can tape it. So why is that needed? Because I can now manipulate that leaf. It will go where I want it to go. It will sit where I want it to sit. And then to the center, I've done just a couple of the lily of the valley leaves just rolled. So now I've made a collection of these pieces, which is one of the lily of the valley leaves wired, two pieces of the valley itself, a stem of freesia, and a little piece of Phalaenopsis orchid. So now, as I put in my center flowers, these flowers, your wiring point is right at the top. This is why we have this here. Again, this is Smithers wire that we're just pulling tightly. Don't pull it too tight to pop it. But then you have the ability now to start to put these in. So then it goes in at the same place, has the same tying point, and now do you see? That's how the bouquet should be. It should be over the hand. When her hands go underneath it, you should not be able to see her hand. How many times do we see bouquets that, number one, they don't really know how to hold them, so it's falling forward. And now we see all of the back of the bouquet, which is not that great to see. So when you do this, then as I say, I have several pieces that I'm putting in here to give me the width. See, now the top of the bouquet is starting to fill in. And so we're going to go here and bend back, and we'll go in here and bend back. So now that I have all of those held here, again, I'm going to use, and they're going to move as you do this, but
But to go off of what Ian was saying earlier, we all know clients don't normally listen to what we tell them. But when you're delivering this, make sure you really do give them some sort of tutorial. We did an event once where I told the bride exactly how to hold it, and you'll see Ian doing a holder later. And we saw her walking down the aisle holding it upside down. So, which was like, ah! But I think that's really important, especially telling somebody else that's present in the room. You know, if they're not paying attention to what you're really saying, that way there's at least 2 people following the instructions.
But you can see this valley is still holding up, even though it's been out of water for 4 to 5 hours. There we go. So as I'm wiring, I wire it and put back into the water. Wire all the blooms first, and then you can go back and you can then clip the stem off to the length that you want and put the support wire on. And then I'm going to add this. So certain flowers like Scabiosa, you can, if it has a hollow stem, you can internally wire it, but please don't bring the wire right through the face of the flower and pull it back in. So if you're pushing it in, you push it as far as you feel it meet the head of the flower, and then there's no need to push it in any further. Just leave it right there. And then here's my valley going in. And now see I'm getting to, this is the highest point of the bouquet.
So a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because maybe there's somebody thinking it in the audience. The purpose of wiring it is to support the little blooms of the valley, correct?
Yep.
To keep it from going limp.
See, so now I'm just inserting these stems of valley individually that kind of fill in the little gaps. And yes, my thumb is starting to cramp. But it's very lightweight. And back in the day when I was in competition work, when we did bouquets like this, one of the techniques, and we'll try it in a little bit, was the judge would balance the bouquet on their finger like a bird. And if that bouquet tipped forward, then you lost points. So it was something that we were taught to pay some really strong attention to. And so really when you're wiring this, it's really like a big corsage. I mean, we don't have the, Sue and I were speaking earlier, you know, about the availability of classes and such like, but there are so many online classes that you can take because many states don't have florist organizations anymore, which is extremely sad. All right, so all of my stems are up to here. I'm going to go back in and catch it.
I really like how you're using the fine wire to bind because it doesn't add bulk. A lot of people would take floral tape and bind, but then you have this really bulky.
You're making it bulkier and bulkier and bulkier, whereas this way it's binding it all at the same place.
Yeah, it's really tidy.
I mean, we used to have to like pad the bouquets with like kitchen tissue and such like to make the handle really comfortable. So there we go. And then we were taught to fan the wires. You fan the wires. A bouquet handle should be 1.5 hands long. I judged a wedding bouquet contest this past weekend, and this girl had made the most beautiful, beautiful wedding bouquet. But all of the weight was to the front, and the handle barely fit in my hand, so the bouquet wanted to slip out of my hand. So she did not place at all. She didn't get first, second, or third because the bouquet wanted to fall out of my hand. So you're going to flare your wires, and then you're going to cut at an angle, cut it blunt at the bottom, and then when you bring it back in, it's now the perfect length. It's 1.5 hands long. So there we go.
Love it. All right, so here is the handle bouquet with the hairs styled, and of course you can do whatever form you like. I am doing threading, so I am going to break the rule, and I'm putting the wire all the way through the flower face and then bringing it back in. However, not every flower will accept that. So you have to know what flowers will accept that and which ones wouldn't. So I wouldn't do a scabiosa, for instance, because the structure of it is too open, and if you pierce it and try to put a hook into it, it's going to kind of fall apart on you. So I love going for things like orchids with nice, deep, strong throats, cymbidium orchids. What I want to say here, I guess, is I do the 1/3, 2/3 as well. That gives it balance, but also like proportion, like, beautiful proportions as well. The heavier flowers, I'm going to put on shorter wires because I'm choosing a wire that's light and transparent. I'm not choosing one that has a ton of strength. So if I want to put something heavy and have it float up high, it's not going to do that for me. So I'm putting in my deep flowers shorter, and then my lighter flowers are going to float beyond those. So I try to center the flower, insert my wire, guide that wire through the throat of the flower, bring it all the way down. At this stage, I take my plier and I make a U-hook and send that hook back into the throat of the flower. If I'm worried about my U-hook holding or the flower slipping, I'll put a little bit of cold glue on that hook before I pull it back into the throat of the flower. So again, the heaviest stuff first, and then I'll move from lighter and smaller and floatier and etc. In terms of like knowing what flowers do well for your environment, I think that's a huge thing. I'm from Michigan, you guys are in Miami, so I would go for things like calla lilies, I would go for tropicals, I would go for cymbidium orchids, things that are like fleshy and hardy and long-lasting, leathery.
Well, I was going to ask for both of you, maybe somebody that's newer into the industry, is there a book or a resource other than Google where you can go and find out the hardiness of flowers or learning what works in foam and not?
I believe AIFD have a book that you can find online that will help with all of that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of testing. I'm a real big nerd about this topic. I have some blog posts. I have a Reliables guide that kind of walks through, month by month what flowers are available and how they are suited, like for wiring or for gluing or for threading. I love this. It's the biggest question I get. How long is that going to last? That's always the question. But I also think these are like fine art, handiwork pieces. So I wouldn't expect to, deliver this at 10 a.m. and have it go all over town for photos, for 7 hours and then be perfect for the ceremony. I just don't think that's reasonable, even for a bouquet that's presented in water. So I really think for these art pieces, you make one for early photos if that's the client's, wish, and then another one is waiting with the planner or waiting at the venue for the ceremony, really, because it's like asking a wedding cake to be in hot sun for 7 hours. So, but that said, if you use calla lilies and really fleshy, hardy things, it'll last all day long. Yeah. So, heavier things deeper, medium things can float, and the wire can hold them, and then light, delicate things can really dance midair.
Beautiful.
So I'm now making a headpiece to match the bouquet. So it's getting made like a large corsage. If it was, this is going to sit to the side of the head and then come over, but if you were doing something that was more of a tiara form, where the height is in the middle, and then you're tapering off at the side, then you would make two of these, one for each half, and then you would bind it together with the wire. And then the tail, you can pull this way. So it does make it fairly easy. So I flared my wires. Now I'm pulling this back a little bit. I've got one more little loopy loop to put in here.
And I'll just show this. I mean, it's super light.
It's as light as a feather. And I'm going to show you the little bird thing just happened. Don't you try and balance it.
No,
I'll show them how to balance it. But yeah. So, I mean, here's your little stem that you can The hairdresser can use bobby pins or whatever to attach it, but this would then be worn here, and the valley would come over the face. So your main detail is here, and then it comes here, and you can put the comb for the veil right in at the back. So, hey, she looks pretty good, doesn't she?
Gorgeous.
I've got some bobby pins. I'm going to put it on after this.
So here's the bouquet. So 1, 2, 3, balanced on my finger. So the bouquet has perfect balance. So as she carries it, you know, the bouquet can be dropped here, it can be held here. It's not going anywhere, and you will be surprised how lightweight this is. So there we go. That's our traditional cascade bouquet.
It's gorgeous. Should we pass it around?
I'm sorry.
Should we pass it around?
Yeah, we can pass it around.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody want to?
And Ian, this is
Start it
a
off?
very narrow cascade
Right.
bouquet. Would you call this more of like a European cascade
It's
bouquet?
a more slim European bouquet.
Our
You know,
beautiful bride Mike will.
most of these girls are like, you know, matches with the wood scraped off anyway. So it, yeah. I mean, we can pass this around as well if you want, Mike. Maybe the other side.
I mean, there's nothing stopping that from being a headpiece either, just saying.
Right.
Just saying.
Maybe you should try that out later.
That could be a headpiece, don't you think?
I think
Your
it could.
bouquet? Mm-hmm. You just kind of shape the handle to fit the head and pin into the side arms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so here's one I made yesterday, the bracelet bouquet. That's the same armature that's going around. So most of the action is happening down here, about 2/3, maybe a little more, 1/3 up here. And it's nice and comfortable, it's light. The flat flowers, what I like to do there, instead of threading and piercing, things like astrantia, things like phalaenopsis, I make a little swirl on the end of my wire, put a little bit of cold glue on the swirl, a little bit on the flower, let it get tacky, and then press and hold. I left these open so you can see the swirl. I can pass this around as well, but I usually back that either with a petal, or I've been using this brass sheeting lately. I just punch it out with a hole punch, and then I put a little brass dot on the back of the flowers just to make it look presentable from all angles.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And like Ian, you just transported that in a flower box and have just, for like the event day.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you have a flower cooler, which I don't have anymore because I'm not doing weddings. I couldn't justify having one anymore. But make it ahead, at least 24 hours, spray it with water. Choose your flowers wisely, knowing your climate and knowing how long it has to perform. Make your piece, spray it with water, tuck it into a Tupperware container, lined with damp paper towel, and then ideally in a floral cooler, if you don't have one, just the coolest, darkest place. And then all that water vapor is forced into the skin of the flowers, if you will, and it hydrates them overnight. And then crown in glory as it goes out the door to seal it all in. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So I've also made a slim cascade in a bouquet holder, and I did not finish it off so that you can see it. So years ago, we would have brides come in and say, I don't want to see that plastic thing in a photograph. Because what happens is, they relax, they forget about how they're supposed to hold the bouquet, and the bouquet tips forward. So why is that? That's because the physical balance is off. So the holder is designed, this holder is designed to be held this way. I personally reverse the holder so that now the hand goes underneath it, and now it creates perfect balance, physical balance for me. So it's much more comfortable. And so when the balance is correct, then the bride holds the bouquet in a photograph the way she's supposed to hold it. And now your work has been shown the way it's supposed to be held. So if you do a bouquet in a holder, you need to show the bride how to hold it. And you may well have designed it at times to be held traditionally, or it may be more runway. She has an arm here. It maybe presents better as a runway held style bouquet. And so again, it's really comfortable, but I use the biggest holder possible because we want all of that foam. And remember, we don't want what I used to call oasis snake, where you've put the stem in and you take it out. You put it in, you take it out. So what are you doing? You're compromising the foam just as you would with a regular arrangement, but you have a small amount of foam here that's going to hold all of these flowers. So it's really important that you make the decision as to where the flower is going, and that's it. It's now in. And so then I usually, once I'm finished, then I will spray some glue into the center here just to hold the flowers in place. But the long piece of ivy, then I normally would put a double leg wire, go right through the base. So see, a lot of people don't use this space back here. You've got to use that space to get the flowers to be in the correct position. Otherwise, yes, that holder is going to be exposed. So then once you've finished, I would use whether it's ivy leaves or whatever, and then you insert them this way, or you can glue it onto with, like Smothers Oasis glue, and glue it onto the holder and finish it off, because you never know how it's going to be photographed. So if you do it this way, then we have that perfect third, 2/3, and it becomes very comfortable. I mean, if you would rather that she holds it this way, she can hold it this way, but you're the designer, so you need to tell her how you designed it to be held. So what I normally do, and they think it's just the cutest thing, which is not really cute, it's just it makes it idiot-proof. I put a little blue bow at the very back of the bouquet. And then they know the bow, the little blue bow, something old, something new, is at the back. And then they know exactly where the positioning of the bouquet, how you want your work to be held. So again, it's very comfortable. There are a lot of flowers in this holder. The lily of the valley is not wired, and so because it has a water source. So there it is, comfortable. It's slim and kind of fun.
Back to me, hey? Okay, so the next one I wanted to show is a handle bouquet. This is an armature that, was kind of like a reaction to the trend I'm seeing. I wanted to do something a little bit transparent. I wanted it to be versatile, to be able to be worn as a necklace, as a headpiece, and as a bouquet. So we can pass this around and I'll show you how I made the armature. Thanks, Mike. I think it's fun to touch things when you're sitting, right?
I guess you're Vanna Black today, not
All
Vanna
right.
White.
So I started with a 12-gauge brass jeweler's wire, and I made a little handle shape. And then with my plier, I just brought the cut ends in so that there's nothing sharp poking anybody. And I'm also going to use that to hold my guide wire. And then I have all of my extension wires that make up the body of the bouquet. I decide how long I want them to be, depending on how long I want my cascade to be. I kind of stagger them. Typically, I use about 20, 24 wires, usually no longer than 24, 26 inches, and no shorter than 10, 12 inches, but you have to do the testing yourself to see what you like. So I take the heavy gauge wire and I sandwich it in with my supplementary wires. And then my guide wire, this is what I'll use to bind everything together. So I'm going to thread it through the whole of the heavy gauge wire. And then I'm just going to start binding. And this part I want to be as neat and uniform as possible because it will be seen. And it has to be, it has to be beautiful and thoughtful. So I just kind of decide how I'm going to space my wrapping, and I try to be consistent with that. The fun thing is you can make whatever shape you want. So you could have a 12-gauge brass wire that is in a large crescent form, or a Hogarth curve form, or a teardrop, whatever form you like, and then your extending wires can be added to any point or multiple points on that guide wire, and you can make really whatever shape floating bouquet that you like.
And AIFD do have a book that you can learn the terms of the crescent, the Hogarth curve, all of these different terms that you're hearing Sue use. AIFD, if you go online, you can find a book there that will help you immensely.
Definitely. I think like knowing what you want to cook before you buy your ingredients at the grocery store, like you need to know what form you want to make before you know what armature to make or what flowers to choose, so I think knowing your forms is really important. So now to finish, I'm just going to thread it through that loop, and then this can become another arm if I want. And then I decide how arced I'd like it to be, and then again I style the hairs, the wire hairs. Always taking care to have some flowers, in the back of the bouquet so that it's balanced and easy to handle and also looks good when the person's carrying it and looking at it. But the flowers I put on the back are usually heavier, sturdier flowers, so it can be laid down on the table, after the ceremony. But the really fun thing about this particular armature is it is really suited to be a necklace or a headpiece. So again, the threading is the same. I have a finished one because it is hard to make nice things when you're also talking on stage in a timely fashion. So Mike, if you would. And I like using allium because every bride wants to smell like onions, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I smell like onions. But I couldn't resist. They're so beautiful. So again, with the flowers, the heavier ones go in deeper. The flatter ones get a little spiral. I'll show you the spiral because that's a question that comes up as well. So I just take my flyer and I make kind of a lily pad, kind of circular spiral like that. And then a little glue goes here. And a little glue goes on the back of the orchid. I've got an orchid already working. Here's my unclogging wire. A little bit here. And then always backing that up with something so that it looks good from all angles. So then just pressing and holding that lily pad into the kind of depression in the back of the orchid until it adheres. And then adding something on the back to make it look beautiful from the back side.
And again, you're not using a ton of product.
No.
But it's not like you can buy one stem of something.
No.
So just keeping that in mind when
Yeah.
you're pricing it, in addition to the amount of time it's taking to do this.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, these are really like a way to show your artistry, and like I feel, the dress is beautiful, the jewelry is beautiful, everything is so considered, and then the bouquet, like if it can also be a little piece of artwork, I think that's just like wonderful. Yeah.
Sue and I were chatting earlier about, when you're going to use a new flower for the first time, you need to test it. You can't let the wedding day be the tester.
No.
And then it dies. It's like making a fun Cosmos boutonniere in Florida in July. It's going to be dead by the time it gets down the aisle. Again, it's back to the photographs, and it doesn't look so good when the boutonniere has keeled over. We spoke of a competitor of mine that underbid us for a wedding. And the fun part was they did not obviously know how to use the materials that they had. And we heard through the grapevine that when the bouquets were delivered to the bride, they were already half dead. And so the mother, it went on record on the video that when they presented the bouquet to her, the girl said, "This is nothing like I wanted," and half the flowers are dead because they'd used soft flowers that had not been conditioned properly, and they shouldn't be getting used in Florida in the summertime. And so we were very happy to hear the mother saying on the video, "And this is the reason that we should have used Botanica." Yay! So in all of that, what I'm saying is if you're going to use Cosmos or some of these more delicate flowers for a wedding, you need to get some a couple weeks ahead of time and play with them and practice with them so that you know how they're going to behave when they're out of water. When you've got a hand-tied bouquet that the photographer has decided to sit here and take a few photographs of in the blazing sun, and it's not in water. And now they're going to take it back in. So by the time that the bride needs to use the bouquet is a bit dehydrated, so the blooms are starting to look tired. So just be very aware of the materials that you're using.
Mm-hmm. That's why I love orchids so much.
This is like
Yeah. Yeah, so you just work from heaviest to lightest, from tightest to most extended, just adding kind of in a triangular fashion I typically do. So like little orchid here, here, and then I want the eye to go down there, so I'm always kind of taking the eye from point to point, repeating my placements that way. Yeah.
I'm always in awe when I see your videos, that her bouquets always look so ethereal and wispy and full of wonder. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I think it reminds me of what you always say to clients about Lily of the Valley bouquets, that you love how they kind of tremble with the bride's hand or the client's hand.
And that's my favorite thing, is when you're using Lily of the Valley in a bouquet and she's nervous just before she goes down the aisle. I love to see, there's nothing I like better than to see a bouquet tremble, you know, and you see all the Lily of the Valley tremble. When Zoe got married, I really wanted her to have a bouquet of all Lily of the Valley. And she wasn't for it. We had
Not
a
what
wedding,
the bride wanted.
We had a wedding 2 weeks before hers that the bride was carrying similar flowers. So she came into the studio as I was making the bouquet for the other bride, and she's like, okay, stop now. That's all I want. So you had a fairly little bouquet.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, she asked if there was anything that was wired in the Oasis holder.
No. The only thing that I would, well, that's a lie. The one thing that I did do, and I always do with a stem of phalaenopsis, is I tape a wire and go between the blooms so that if they bump the bouquet, it doesn't snap the whole end off the phale. You know, when you're, particularly if you're using a bouquet that is all phalaenopsis, you know, it's a very delicate bloom. So I always put a covered taped wire, and you can come up and see this later, that has, it just wraps through the bouquet. The only thing that I normally wire are the few stems that are going in from the bottom. And then you double prong, double leg the flower, and the stems come right through the holder to the back, and then hook it back into the holder. So it's not going to go anywhere. You know, it's not going to come out. So, yeah. So here's the, let me show you the leaf again. This is a bad leaf, but, so you're going to take the wire, go through the leaf, and come right through the other side of the vein, push the wire through, pull them down, use one of them and come around, and you're done. So then you can nip the length of this, and then just tape it. And then it's, you know, I can now bend that leaf this way. I can make it do whatever I want, but it needs the support behind it, and you need to use the lightest wire that you can possibly use, but still support the leaf at the same time. So, yeah.
Any other questions? We do have Mike with the mic.
Pricing? It's my least favorite question.
Oh, pricing? How do you price a wired bouquet? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, how do you get a basic price? I mean, when you do that much mechanism work, that's a big dollar.
Right.
Yeah.
He's just meaning like the amount of time that it takes. How do you price
I mean, you
that?
have to take that into consideration. It took me, for the bouquet that's getting passed around, it probably took me an hour and a half to wire all the flowers. So normally, the best plan for that is, if you're the senior designer designing, you're going to wire everything and let someone else tape it for you. And it's going to move a whole lot faster. But you do need to account for the length of time that it's going to take to wire it, rather than, you know, I can do a hand-tied in 10 minutes. So whereas the wired bouquet is going to take probably 2 hours, between the hour and a half to assemble it, or sorry, to wire it, and the half hour to assemble it. So you do need to take into consideration your
I
time.
understand yours. I'm asking about Sue's, how she arrives at pricing.
Okay.
Sue, your
Yeah.
pricing.
I mean, the same, but instead of like 30% labor for, a standard like, spiral bridesmaid, I would do maybe 50 or 60% labor. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also it's like you kind of have to turn the dials. It's a piece of artwork. This is all artwork, but I think especially with these handicraft pieces, you kind of have to turn the dial and like price for your art, Like a painting isn't just the canvas and the time it took to paint it, it's also like your skill. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And I think as florists, we undervalue ourselves and our profession.
Yeah.
People when they see flowers that you have done, they're going to ask in one of two ways: either who was your florist or who was your florist. So there's enthusiasm. So they really want to know who did the flowers, whereas the other one is like, well, who did your flowers? And I think that we forget that we are professionals, because so many times, and years ago I found myself doing the same thing, that if you were in a ballroom and you were setting it up and somebody would say, well, and who are you? And I would say, I'm just the florist. And I was like, wait a minute, I am not just the florist, I am the florist, because this room is being made beautiful because of what we are doing. So I think, we have to have self-confidence and believe in who we are, and know that the guy down the street does not have the same capability as you. So you need to have the confidence and the chutzpah to tell them who you are.
You probably want a number, hey?
Yeah, he wants a.
He wants a number.
He wants to know what
He's like
the price range in
300,
Michigan would
400,
be.
500, is that where you're going? He wants a number.
Yeah.
They always want the number.
There's a reason why I'm not a wedding florist anymore.
But if you, I'm
'Cause I was
willing to
terrible at
learn your
pricing.
method.
Maybe we
but
should play like Let's Make a Deal and everybody could just price it themselves.
I think no less than 400 for a little artwork bouquet like this.
Okay,
I would start at 400. But I'm in Michigan. I'm in Ann Arbor. What's Miami like? You guys are fancy down here.
It all depends on your market too.
Yeah, it all depends on how much you mark up and stuff. Any other?
So what do you normally work on now that you're not doing weddings?
I've been teaching for 7 years and writing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great segue. Do you have any classes coming up or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I have online classes always, and so I do miss weddings, and I love wedding floristry, especially like the handiwork aspects. The bridal party was always my jam. That was like what I was assigned to when I was freelancing, and I always like took that on when I did my own weddings. That was my favorite part. But my curiosity and family circumstances led me to testing out if teaching could be a viable thing, and it took off, luckily. So that's the only reason why I'm not a wedding florist anymore. It's not that I didn't enjoy the work, But yeah, I have online classes always. They're all linked in my Instagram profile. And then I do, workshops and conferences. I have a little tour with Mayesh this summer. So things like that.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I'm not doing that, I'm like seriously testing and nerding out on mechanics in my studio. That's what I love to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I have some classes too. So
Yeah.
in March of 2026, I will be teaching a 3-day retreat that could change your business forever. So we're limiting it to 15 students. That then allows them to have direct access to me, because we don't have a big crowd. It's me teaching. You're right there, open book. You can ask any question you want, 100% transparent, and you're going to learn lots of wiring techniques as well as large installations, how to price it, and all of these different things in between. So we would love to see you. I have some postcards. If anybody is interested, you can come up and get one when we're finished. And if you have any interest, we would love to see you.
My name is Shalisa. I'm a planner here in Miami. I'm not a florist. However, I do tend to know a little bit about flowers, but when you have a bride in particular that sees something that's Northeast floral based or Midwest flower based, and they say, I want that type of flower here in the South. I mean, with Jet Fresh, yes, we can get them, but how would you best be able to get a florist to recreate that if they are like experimenting with the flower? I mean, should we just outright say that's absolutely not going to work?
I think I would advise them that you can give them a similar feeling.
Yes.
But you need to use a flower that is going to last in the temperatures here in Florida because, and just give them the hard facts. These flowers are very delicate. They're going to die. So if you can, trust us to substitute with a flower that will give you a similar look, then that would be the best way to go. Otherwise, if you want me to create the bouquet exactly as it is, I know it's not going to live, and I'm going to tell you that ahead of time. So, it's always difficult when somebody is pushing for a product, and it might be something that they see in a photo shoot that has been cut out of a tree or a plant from the yard. And so it's very difficult. I think also you can explain to them that some of these things are photo shoots and they're not meant for the bouquets to last. So they need to consider that. It's not a real wedding. It's very often a staged photo shoot.
I totally agree. I think focusing on form and color and feeling instead of like specific flowers, and then just building that knowledge of like what will perform in South Florida versus what will perform, in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Like you just have to build that library. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I have those blog posts. They're free. Like please, take them and let that help you. But it has to perform.
Right.
Like expectations have to be managed. So yeah. I think color and
it goes
form.
back to that confidence thing. You are the professional. Just like the attorneys are professional, the doctors are professional. You are the professional in your area on flowers. And so you just need to have that inner confidence to do it. And sometimes when you do it the first time, it's probably like taking a deep breath and jumping off a cliff. I remember the first time a client asked me how much this table center was, and I had to say $1,000, and I was like, "Oh," I was so nervous about it. But after I said it the first time, it felt easy beyond that. So I think you just have to, give yourself a little pep talk and have the confidence within yourself to just say, here it is.
Yep. Or make 2 bouquets. I really think like some people don't like that answer, but you can't expect a natural product to last in the hot, direct sun for 7-8 hours. It's just not reasonable. So I think just being honest and telling them like I would definitely want to make this Cosmos bouquet for you, but you're definitely going to need a few of them if you're going to take this all over town.
Something that's seen in a magazine from Montana, it's not going to last in Miami.
Right. But it's good you guys have so many orchids.
Oh, look at this.
Those
orchid
will.
art over here.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So these can be tiny, like for prom. They can be large. You can use a heavier gauge wire if you need to support heavier things. But it just is really like versatile. And you can kind of shape it in midair and decide what shape you want. Yeah. So
Now, I would love to see the tremble with that bouquet, wouldn't you? It's fabulous.
I think I am trembling.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Anything
Our
else?
time is about up.
That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for listening to us today.
Yeah.
And Sue and I will both be available to answer questions if you have them. And so don't be shy.
Yep,
if
don't
you
be
think
shy.
you've got a crazy question, you might get a crazier answer. So, So come on up. Please don't feel shy. Just come and ask whatever you need.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.